thought I knew my husband, until I heard a 7-year-old boy calling him Daddy on his phone at midnight. For 5 years of marriage, I'd been the perfect wife to Evan Whitmore, supporting his rise to CEO while his mother made subtle digs about my race and worth. But nothing prepared me for discovering he had an entire secret family across town, complete with bedtime stories and soccer games I never knew existed. The DNA test results were burning a hole in my purse as our anniversary party guests raised their glasses to celebrate our perfect marriage. I could have stayed quiet, could have played the obedient wife and handled it behind closed doors like his mother suggested. Instead, I stood up in front of everyone, his colleagues, his family, our friends, and decided it was time for the truth to finally see the light. What I did next would either destroy everything we'd built or reveal that there was never anything real to destroy in the first place. If you're watching this, hit subscribe and tell me where you're watching from, because this story of betrayal, DNA reveals, and ice-cold revenge is just getting started. The morning light filtered through our kitchen windows like honey, casting everything in that perfect golden glow that made even ordinary moments feel special. I stood at the marble counter, addressing the last of our anniversary party invitations in my careful handwriting. 5 years of marriage deserved celebration, and I wanted everything to be perfect. Mrs. Aisha Whitmore, I whispered to myself, still loving the sound of my married name after all this time. Evan walked into the kitchen, already dressed in one of his expensive suits. His blonde hair was perfectly styled, and he smelled like that cologne I bought him for Christmas. He looked every inch the successful tech CEO he'd become, nothing like the struggling graduate student I'd fallen in love with in college. Still working on those invitations? He kissed my cheek quickly, the kind of kiss that had become routine rather than romantic. Almost finished. I held up the cream-colored cardstock. Your mother insisted on the hand calligraphy, said it shows proper breeding. Evan chuckled, but it sounded forced. You know how Mother is about appearances. I did know. Marilyn Whitmore had made it clear from day one that I wasn't what she'd pictured for her son's wife. She never said it directly, of course. People like the Whitmores were too polished for obvious racism. Instead, she offered suggestions about my hair, my clothes, my voice, little comments that cut deep, but could always be explained away as helpful advice. The caterers confirmed for Saturday, I said, checking my list. And the flowers will arrive Friday afternoon. About that. Evan poured himself coffee from our expensive machine. I might be a little late getting home Friday. School conference with one of the board members. Something cold settled in my stomach, though I couldn't say why. School conference? Yeah, you know, the charter school project I've been working on. Boring stuff. He waved his hand dismissively. Don't wait up if I'm really late. The charter school project. Evan mentioned it sometimes, but always vaguely. When I asked questions, his answers stayed general. I'd learned not to push. Successful men had complicated business dealings, right? Of course, I smiled, the way I'd been trained to do. I'll just finish up the party prep. After he left, I sat alone in our beautiful kitchen. Everything around me screamed expensive taste. The granite countertops, the custom cabinets, the view of our manicured backyard. This was the life I'd dreamed of when I was growing up in my mother's small apartment. This was success. So why did I feel so empty? I picked up my phone and called my friend Maya, needing to hear a familiar voice. Girl, you better be calling with good news about this party, Maya said, answering on the first ring. Just finishing the invitations. Thanks for helping with the planning. Of course. How's my favorite power couple doing? I paused, surprised by the question. Maya and I had been friends since college. She knew me better than anyone. We're good. Why? I don't know. You just sound tired lately. When's the last time you and Evan went on a real date? Just the two of you? I tried to remember. Before his latest promotion, we used to have dinner out once a week. We'd talk about everything: his dreams, my writing ambitions, our future children. Lately, though, Evan was always working late or attending networking events. I'd stopped asking to come along after Marilyn suggested I might be overwhelming his business contacts. "We've both been busy," I said finally. Maya's tone suggested she had more to say, but she held back. "Well, this party will be good for you both. Quality time with friends and family." After we hung up, I looked around the empty house. When did it start feeling more like a museum than a home? That evening, I cooked Evan's favorite meal: lamb chops with rosemary potatoes. I lit candles and opened a bottle of wine, hoping we could reconnect. Maybe Maya was right. Maybe we just needed to spend more time together. Evan came home past 9, looking exhausted. "Sorry, babe. The meeting ran long." He loosened his tie and sat heavily at the dining table. "This looks amazing. I thought we could have a nice dinner together. We haven't talked in a while." "You're right." He smiled, and for a moment I saw the man I'd married. "Tell me about your day." I talked about the party preparations, my morning at the gym, the book I was reading. He nodded and made appropriate responses, but I could tell his mind was elsewhere. When his phone buzzed, he automatically reached for it. "Sorry, might be important." He glanced at the screen, and his expression changed. Something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe worry. He quickly silenced the phone. "Everything okay?" "Yeah, just work stuff. You know how it is." But I didn't know how it was. Lately, I felt like I knew less and less about my husband's daily life. We lived in the same house, slept in the same bed, but we were becoming strangers. "Evan, do you think we should try for a baby soon?" The words came out before I could stop them. He froze with his fork halfway to his mouth. "A baby?" "We talked about it before we got married. Remember? We said we'd start trying after your company stabilized." "Right. Yes, of course." He set down his fork. "It's just, the timing might not be perfect right now, with the new expansion and everything." "There's always something with work," I said quietly. "That's not fair, Aisha. I'm building something here. For us. For our future. But when does the future actually start?" He reached across the table and took my hand. His skin was warm, familiar. "Soon, okay? I promise. Let's just get through this busy period." I nodded, but something hollow opened in my chest. How many times had he said soon over the past year? Later that night, I lay awake listening to Evan's steady breathing. His phone sat on his nightstand, face down like always. When we first got married, he used to read me funny texts or show me pictures from his day. Now his phone was like a closed door. Around midnight, the phone vibrated. Then again. And again. I waited, but Evan didn't stir. He'd always been a heavy sleeper. The buzzing continued, insistent. My heart pounded as I slipped out of bed quietly. I shouldn't look. I knew I shouldn't look. But my feet moved toward his side of the bed anyway. The phone's screen glowed in the darkness. 3 missed calls and several text messages from a number not saved in his contacts. As I watched, another text came through. "Daddy, are you coming to my soccer game tomorrow? You promised." My breath caught in my throat. "Daddy?" Before I could process what I was reading, a voice message notification appeared. My finger moved without permission, tapping the play button. A child's voice filled the quiet bedroom. A little boy, maybe 6 or 7 years old. "Hi, Daddy. Mama said you can't come tomorrow, but I wanted to tell you about practice. I scored 3 goals. Coach said I'm getting really good. I miss you. When are you coming to see us again? I love you, Daddy." The message ended, leaving only silence and the sound of my racing heart. Daddy. Us. When are you coming to see us again? I stood frozen in our bedroom, still holding Evan's phone. The child's voice echoed in my head, so innocent, so full of love. Love for my husband, who had never mentioned knowing any children. My husband, who kept making excuses about starting our own family. My hands shook as I set the phone back exactly where it had been. I slipped back into bed, careful not to wake Evan. He shifted slightly, but continued sleeping peacefully. I stared at the ceiling, my mind racing. There had to be an explanation. Maybe it was a wrong number. Maybe it was some kind of charity work Evan hadn't mentioned. Maybe it was his cousin's kid, though I'd never heard of any cousin with children. Maybe. But deep in my gut, I knew. I knew the way women know when something is terribly wrong. The way animals sense earthquakes before they hit. I lay there until dawn, listening to my husband sleep peacefully beside me while my world quietly crumbled. The next morning, Evan acted completely normal. He showered, shaved, and dressed for work while humming under his breath. He kissed my forehead and told me to have a good day. "Oh, by the way," he said casually, adjusting his tie in our bedroom mirror, "I might be home a little late tonight. That school meeting I mentioned? We're doing a site visit." Site visit. Just checking out potential locations. Nothing exciting. He left whistling. I sat on our bed in my pajamas, staring at the space where he'd been standing. Everything looked normal. Our bedroom with its expensive furniture and soft morning light streaming through silk curtains. Everything exactly the same as yesterday. Except nothing was the same. I forced myself to go through my usual routine. Shower, coffee, light breakfast. I tried to read, but the words swam on the page. I tried to work on my writing, but my mind kept playing that child's voice on repeat. "Daddy, are you coming to my soccer game tomorrow?" Around noon, I did something I'd never done before. I looked up Evan's location on our shared phone app. He was across town, in a neighborhood I'd never heard of. Not downtown where his office was. Not at any school or meeting location that made sense. I stared at the little blue dot that represented my husband, sitting somewhere I couldn't explain. And that's when I started paying attention. Really paying attention. That evening, Evan came home with flowers. Beautiful white roses that must have cost a fortune. "What's the occasion?" I asked, though my smile felt like plastic. "No occasion." Can't a man buy his wife flowers? He seemed almost too cheerful, too eager to please, like someone making up for something. "They're lovely. Thank you." Over dinner, I watched him carefully. Really watched. The way his phone stayed face down throughout the meal. The way he answered questions about his day with just enough detail to sound believable, but not enough to verify. The way he kept checking his watch. "Evan, tell me about the charter school project." "What do you want to know?" "Everything. What kind of school? Where? Who's funding it?" He blinked, clearly caught off guard by my sudden interest. It's complicated. Educational initiatives always are. I'd love to be involved. Maybe I could volunteer or help with fundraising." "That's sweet, but it's really more of a business development thing. Boring board meetings and financial planning. You'd hate it." "Try me." Something shifted in his expression. A wall went up behind his eyes. "Aisha, why all the questions?" "I just want to know about your work." "Is that strange?" "No, of course not. It's just..." He reached for his phone as it buzzed. "Sorry, this might be important." He glanced at the screen and his face went pale. Quickly he silenced it and shoved it into his pocket. "Work?" I asked. "Yeah, nothing urgent." But his hands were shaking slightly as he cut his steak. That night, I pretended to fall asleep early. Evan stayed downstairs, claiming he had emails to catch up on. Through our bedroom door, I could hear the low murmur of his voice. He was talking to someone, but I couldn't make out the words. The conversation went on for over an hour, When he finally came to bed, he slipped in quietly, thinking I was asleep. He lay still for a long time before his breathing evened out. I stared into the darkness, pieces of a puzzle slowly forming in my mind, a puzzle I was terrified to complete. But I couldn't stop myself from looking now. The next morning, I started a list. Times Evan was late, calls he took in other rooms, unexplained charges on our credit cards, weekends he disappeared for work emergencies. The pattern was there. I just hadn't wanted to see it. Maya called around lunch. How are the party preparations going? Good. Everything's coming together. You still sound tired. Girl, what's going on? I almost told her. The words sat on the tip of my tongue, ready to spill out. But what would I say? My husband got a text from a child calling him daddy, and I think he might be living some kind of double life? It sounded crazy, even in my head. Just wedding stress, I said instead. Well, make sure you enjoy your own party. You deserve to celebrate. After we hung up, I sat in my beautiful kitchen, surrounded by party planning supplies and anniversary decorations. In 3 days, we'd stand in front of our friends and family, celebrating 5 years of marriage. 5 years of what, exactly? I picked up my keys, my hands moving with a purpose my mind hadn't quite caught up to yet. It was time to find out who my husband really was. The address from Evan's GPS led me to a modest neighborhood about 20 minutes from our house. Tree-lined streets with small, neat homes and children's bikes scattered on front lawns. The kind of neighborhood where families lived. Real families. I parked across the street from a pale yellow house with a swing set in the backyard. The address matched the location I'd memorized from his phone. And there was Evan's car in the driveway. My heart hammered against my ribs as I sat there, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. Maybe he was visiting clients. Maybe it was perfectly innocent. Then the front door opened. A woman came out first. She looked to be about my age, with dark hair pulled back in a ponytail. She was pretty in a tired, everyday way. Behind her, a little boy ran out, bouncing with excitement. And then Evan appeared. My husband stepped out of that house like he belonged there. Like he lived there. The little boy ran straight to him, and Evan scooped him up in his arms, spinning him around. Daddy! Even from across the street, I could hear the child's delighted squeal. I watched my husband kiss the boy's forehead, watched him put his arm around the woman's shoulders, watched them look like a family, a real family. My vision blurred, and it took me a moment to realize I was crying. Silent tears that fell onto my hands as I gripped the steering wheel. This wasn't an affair. Affairs were about sex, about passion, about moments stolen in hotel rooms. This was a life, a whole other life. Evan had another family. I sat there for what felt like hours, watching through my tears as my husband played with a child who wasn't mine. Watching him kiss a woman who wasn't me. Watching him live a life I knew nothing about. When they finally went back inside, I started my car with shaking hands and drove home. Our house felt like a stage set when I walked in. Beautiful, expensive, and completely fake. I went to our bedroom and sat on the edge of our bed, staring at my reflection in the mirror across the room. The same woman who'd been addressing party invitations just days ago stared back at me. But everything had changed. When Evan came home that evening, he was humming again. He kissed my cheek and asked about my day like nothing had happened. Good, I managed to say. Quiet day. Mine too. Boring meetings all afternoon. I looked at this man I'd been married to for 5 years. This stranger who shared my bed and my name, but apparently not his heart. Evan, is there anything you need to tell me? He froze for just a moment. About what? About anything. About us. About your work. About anything at all. His eyes searched my face. Should there be? The question hung between us, heavy with possibility. This was his chance. His moment to tell the truth. To explain. to let me into whatever was happening. Instead, he smiled and wrapped his arms around me. "You're my wife, Aisha. You're my family. That's all that matters." The lie tasted bitter in the air between us. That night, I lay awake planning what I would do next, because I couldn't unknow what I'd seen. I couldn't go back to being the naive wife who trusted blindly. I needed proof. I needed answers. I needed the truth. The next morning, I called Dr. Rebecca Chen's office before my courage could fail me. Dr. Chen ran the most discreet DNA testing lab in the city. I'd found her online after hours of research, my hands shaking as I scrolled through reviews that praised her professionalism and confidentiality. "I need to schedule a paternity test," I told the receptionist, my voice barely above a whisper. "Of course. Can you bring the father and child in together?" My stomach clenched. "The father doesn't know about the test." A pause. "We can work with that. Dr. Chen offers consultation for sensitive situations." I booked an appointment for that afternoon, using my maiden name. Aisha Turner felt safer than Aisha Whitmore right now. Evan left for work as usual, kissing my cheek and promising to be home for dinner. "Looking forward to a quiet evening with my beautiful wife," he said. The words felt like knives. Dr. Chen's office was located in a professional building downtown, sterile and anonymous, perfect for secrets. Dr. Chen herself was a small woman with kind eyes who didn't ask unnecessary questions. "I understand you need a paternity test conducted discreetly," she said, settling across from me in her office. "My husband. I think he might have a child with another woman. I saw them together. But I need to know for certain before I do anything." Dr. Chen nodded like this was the most normal request in the world. "We can test using samples you provide. Hair with roots, saliva from a drinking glass, even a toothbrush. As long as we can extract DNA. How long for results?" "The 48 to 72 hours for a rush order." I thought about our anniversary party, now just 2 days away. "I'll take the rush order." That evening, I made Evan his favorite dinner again. Grilled salmon with lemon, the way his mother taught me during our engagement. I poured wine and lit candles, playing the role of devoted wife while my heart felt dead in my chest. "This is nice," Evan said, relaxing into his chair. "We should do this more often." I was thinking the same thing. I waited until he was comfortable, wine warming his mood, before I spoke again. "Evan, I want to ask you something, and I want you to be completely honest with me." His fork paused halfway to his mouth. "Okay. Are you faithful to me?" The question hung in the air like smoke. Evan set down his fork carefully, his expression shifting from relaxed to guarded. "That's a strange question, Aisha. Why would you ask that?" "Just answer it. Please." He reached across the table for my hand. "Of course I'm faithful. You're my wife. I love you." "Have you ever been with another woman since we got married?" "No." His answer came quick, practiced. "Never." "Do you know any children who call you daddy?" This time, he went completely still. The color drained from his face, and I knew. Even before he opened his mouth to lie again, I knew. "I don't understand what you're asking." "It's a simple question, Evan." "Aisha, you're being paranoid. Has someone been filling your head with crazy ideas? My mother warned me that some of your friends might—" "Don't." The word came out sharper than I intended. "Don't blame my friends or your mother. Just answer the question." Evan stood up abruptly, pacing to the window. When he turned back, his expression had changed completely. The mask of the loving husband was gone, replaced by something cold and calculating. "There's a child," he said quietly. My heart stopped beating. "Her name is Lena Brooks. The boy is Caleb. He's 7. 7 years old," which meant Evan had been with this woman since before we were married. "How long?" My voice sounded strange, like it was coming from underwater. It's complicated, Aisha. How? Long. Evan ran his hands through his hair, the perfect styling falling apart. Since college. We dated before I met you then. Things happened. Things happened? What kind of things? She got pregnant, but we weren't together anymore. I was with you by then. I didn't even know about the baby until he was almost 2 years old. Lies. I could see them in his eyes, hear them in his voice. But I sat still, letting him talk, gathering information like evidence for a trial. Is he yours? A long pause. I don't know. Maybe. Probably. You don't know or you won't say. I've never taken a test. Lena claims he is, but she could be lying. Women do that sometimes, especially when there's money involved. The casual cruelty in his voice made me sick. He was talking about a child, a little boy who called him Daddy. But you've been seeing him, supporting him. Evan's jaw tightened. I help out sometimes. It's the right thing to do. Even if he's not mine, Lena needed support. For 7 years? It's not what you think, Aisha. It's not a relationship. It's just responsibility. I stood up slowly, my legs unsteady. You've been living a double life for 7 years, and you're calling it responsibility. Don't be dramatic. Nothing has changed between us. You're still my wife. This doesn't affect our marriage. It doesn't affect our marriage. My voice rose despite my efforts to stay calm. You have a child with another woman. Maybe I have a child. We don't know for sure. But you visit him. You play with him. You're in his life. Evan's expression hardened. Who told you that? The question confirmed everything I'd feared. He wasn't denying it anymore. He was just angry that I'd found out. I saw you, Evan. I followed you yesterday. I saw you with them. For a moment, something like fear flickered in his eyes. Then it was gone, replaced by cold fury. You followed me? I saw you pick up that little boy. I heard him call you Daddy. I watched you kiss her. It's not what it looked like. What did it look like, Evan? Because from where I sat, it looked like you have a whole other family. That's ridiculous. Lena and I aren't together. We're not a couple. But you're in that child's life. Because I'm trying to do the right thing. God, Aisha, I'm trying to handle a complicated situation the best way I know how. By lying to me for 7 years. I was protecting you. I was protecting our marriage. By having another family? I don't have another family. His voice exploded through our dining room. I have you. You're my family. You're my wife. I stared at this man I'd thought I knew. His face was red with anger, his hands clenched into fists. This wasn't the gentle, ambitious man I'd married. This was a stranger. If that child is yours, you need to take a DNA test. Evan laughed, but there was no humor in it. You want me to take a DNA test? Yes. Fine. The word came out like a slap. Fine, we'll take a DNA test. And when it proves he's not mine, maybe you'll stop this insanity. But something in his eyes told me he already knew what the test would show. We'll go tomorrow, I said. Tomorrow? Aisha, our anniversary party is tomorrow night. Then we'll go in the morning. Evan stared at me for a long moment. Then incredibly, he smiled. It was the coldest smile I'd ever seen. You know what? Let's do it. Let's take the damn test. But when it comes back negative, I never want to hear about this again. He left the dining room without another word, leaving me alone with our untouched dinner and the ruins of everything I'd believed about my life. That night, he slept in the guest room. Dr. Chen's office felt different the next morning. More real. More final. Evan sat beside me in the waiting room. His anger from the night before replaced by a weird confidence that made my skin crawl. "This is ridiculous," he muttered under his breath. "Complete waste of time and money." I didn't respond. I'd barely slept, and every nerve in my body felt raw. Dr. Chen called us back to her office, professional and calm. She explained the process, while Evan fidgeted in his chair like a man who had somewhere better to be. "We'll take samples from both of you today," she said. "And you mentioned you could provide a sample from the child." I pulled a small plastic bag from my purse. Yesterday, while Evan was at work, I'd driven back to that yellow house. I'd sat in my car for 2 hours, waiting. When the woman, Lena, left with the boy to go to the park, I'd followed at a distance. The boy had left his juice box on a picnic table while he played. I'd waited until they moved to the swings, then quickly retrieved it. It felt like stealing. It felt wrong. But I needed to know. "Hair from a brush would be better," Dr. Chen said, examining the juice box. "This is all I could get." She nodded. "We can work with this. The saliva should be sufficient." The actual testing took 15 minutes. Mouth swabs for Evan and me, careful extraction of saliva from the juice box straw. Dr. Chen labeled everything with clinical precision, while Evan tapped his foot impatiently. "Results will be ready Monday morning," she said, sealing the samples. Monday. 2 days after our anniversary party. "I still think this is insane," Evan said as we left the office. "Then you have nothing to worry about." We drove home in silence. The house felt like a tomb when we walked in. Our anniversary party was in 6 hours, and we could barely look at each other. "I need to get ready," I said. "Aisha." Evan caught my arm as I headed for the stairs. "Whatever happens with this test, we're going to get through it. We're married. We love each other. That's what matters." I looked down at his hand on my arm, then up at his face. He was trying to look sincere, but I could see the calculation behind his eyes. "Do you love me, Evan?" "Of course I love you." "Then why did you lie to me?" "I was trying to protect you." "From what?" "From exactly this. From you getting hurt and upset over something that doesn't matter." "A child doesn't matter?" "Not our child, not my child." But even as he said it, I could see in his eyes that he knew it wasn't true. I spent 2 hours getting ready for my own anniversary party. I chose a black dress that Evan had always loved, did my makeup carefully, styled my hair in soft waves. In the mirror, I looked like the perfect wife celebrating 5 years of marriage. Inside, I felt like I was dressing for a funeral. The guests started arriving at 6. Evan's colleagues from work, our friends from college, neighbors, family members. Everyone dressed in their best clothes, bringing gifts and congratulations for the happy couple. Marilyn Whitmore arrived fashionably late, wearing a dress that probably cost more than most people's cars. She air-kissed my cheeks and gave me the kind of smile that never reached her eyes. "Darling, you look lovely. Though that dress is rather dramatic, don't you think?" "Thank you, Marilyn." "Well, I suppose 5 years calls for some drama." She moved past me to greet her son with genuine warmth. Maya arrived with her husband, pulling me into a real hug. "You look beautiful," she whispered. "But are you okay? You seem tense." "Just party nerves." She studied my face with the concern of a true friend. "If you need anything, you call me, okay?" I nodded, not trusting my voice. The party swirled around me like a dream. People laughed, clinked glasses, told stories about Evan and me. Our love story became entertainment, how we met in college, our romantic engagement, our beautiful wedding. I played my part perfectly. Smiled at the right moments, laughed at the stories, accepted congratulations with grace. All while my husband worked the room like the politician he'd become, charming everyone with his wit and success. "Speech! Speech!" someone called out around 8 o'clock. The crowd gathered in our living room. glasses raised expectantly. Evan moved to the fireplace, commanding attention with the ease of a natural leader. "Thank you all for being here tonight," he began. 5 years ago, I married the most beautiful, intelligent, supportive woman I'd ever met. He found my eyes across the room, and his smile looked so genuine that for a moment I almost forgot everything that had happened. "Aisha, you've made me a better man. You've stood by me through every challenge, celebrated every success. I couldn't have built the life we have without you." The crowd murmured appreciation. Someone said, "Aw." A camera flashed. "Marriage isn't always easy," Evan continued. "It requires trust, commitment, and forgiveness. But when you find the right person, it's worth every challenge." Trust, commitment, forgiveness. The words felt like mockery. "So, here's to 5 more years, and 5 years after that, and every year until we're old and gray together." He raised his glass, and the crowd followed suit. "To Aisha, the love of my life." "To Aisha and Evan," the guests chorused. I lifted my glass with everyone else, the crystal heavy in my hand. In that moment, surrounded by the people who thought they were celebrating our love, I made a decision. The DNA results were locked in an envelope in Dr. Chen's office, but I already knew what they would say. I'd seen the truth in Evan's eyes, heard it in that little boy's voice calling him Daddy. Monday, when the results came back, I would have my proof. But tonight, I had something else. Tonight, I had a choice. I could keep pretending. Keep playing the perfect wife to a man who'd been living a lie for 7 years. Keep smiling and accepting his explanations and letting him convince me that black was white. Or I could stop. I looked around the room at all these people who thought they knew us, who thought they were celebrating something real. "Actually," I heard myself say, my voice cutting through the congratulatory chatter, "I have something I'd like to share too." The room quieted. Evan's smile flickered, uncertainty creeping into his eyes. I reached into my purse and pulled out an envelope. Not the DNA results. Those wouldn't be ready until Monday. But I'd made a copy of the lab receipt, the one that listed Evan Whitmore, Aisha Whitmore, and Child Sample A as subjects for paternity testing. "Everyone, thank you for coming tonight to celebrate our marriage. Before we continue, there's something important you should know about the man we're honoring." Evan's face went white. "Aisha, what are you doing?" "I'm telling the truth. Something that's apparently been missing from our marriage for quite some time." The room was completely silent now. Marilyn Whitmore's glass froze halfway to her lips. Maya stepped closer, her face full of concern and confusion. "Yesterday, I discovered that my husband has been maintaining a relationship with another woman and her 7-year-old son for the past several years. Today, we took a DNA test to determine if that child is his." Gasps rippled through the room. Someone's wine glass hit the floor and shattered. "Aisha, stop." Evan's voice was quiet, dangerous. "The results won't be ready until Monday, but I already know what they'll say. Just like I know that everything about tonight, everything about our marriage, has been a lie." I looked directly at Evan, my husband of 5 years, the father of another woman's child. "So before we toast to 5 more years of marriage, I thought our guests should know exactly what kind of man they're celebrating." The silence that followed was deafening. Then the chaos began. The first sound was Marilyn's wine glass hitting the hardwood floor. The crystal exploded into pieces, red wine spreading like blood across our perfect white rug. Then everyone started talking at once. "Oh my God," someone whispered. "Is this really happening?" another voice asked. "Maybe we should go," Maya's husband said quietly. But nobody moved. They all stood frozen in our living room, witnesses to the destruction of what they'd thought was a perfect marriage. Evan's face had gone from white to red. Aisha, stop this right now. Stop what? Telling the truth. You're humiliating yourself. You're humiliating both of us. I'm humiliating myself? I laughed, and the sound was sharp enough to cut. Evan, you've been lying to me for 7 years. You have a child with another woman. How exactly am I the one who should be embarrassed? We don't know if he's my child. But you know he might be. You've known all along. The room was so quiet I could hear people breathing. Marilyn stood rigid beside the fireplace, her face a mask of horror and fury. But her anger wasn't directed at her son. "How dare you?" she said, her voice low and deadly. "How dare you air private family business in front of our friends and colleagues? Your private family business involves a 7-year-old child who calls your son daddy." "Alleged child," Marilyn snapped. "Women make claims all the time. It doesn't mean they're true. I've seen them together, Marilyn. I've watched your son play with this little boy. There's nothing alleged about it." Evan moved toward me, his hands raised like he was approaching a dangerous animal. "Aisha, please, let's talk about this privately. Our guests don't need to hear this." "Why? Because it's embarrassing? Because it makes you look bad? Because it's nobody else's business. It became my business the day I married you. It became my business every time you lied to my face." Maya finally found her voice. "Aisha, honey, are you sure about this?" I pulled out my phone and showed her the lab receipt. "DNA test scheduled for this morning. Results Monday." The paper passed from hand to hand like evidence in a courtroom. Our friends and family read it in stunned silence. Evan Whitmore. Aisha Whitmore. Child sample A. "This is insane," Evan said, pacing now like a caged animal. "You're destroying our marriage over something that might not even be true." Our marriage was already destroyed. I just didn't know it yet. One of his business partners cleared his throat awkwardly. "Maybe we should give you two some privacy." "No," I said firmly. "Stay, please. I want witnesses." "Witnesses to what?" Evan demanded. "To what happens next." I looked around the room at all these people who'd come to celebrate us. Our college friends who'd been at our wedding. Evan's colleagues who'd watched him build his reputation as a family man. The neighbors who thought we were the perfect couple. "Evan, I need you to answer one question honestly. In front of everyone here. Aisha, don't do this. Is Caleb Brooks your son?" The name hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. Evan's face went through a series of expressions: anger, fear, calculation, and finally, defeat. "I don't know," he said quietly. "But he could be." "Yes, he could be." "And you've been in his life for how long?" Evan closed his eyes. "About 5 years. 5 years. Our entire marriage he'd been playing father to another child." "And Lena Brooks, the boy's mother? What about her? Are you in a relationship with her?" "No, not the way you mean. But you spend time with her. You support her financially. Sometimes." "How often do you see them?" "Aisha, please stop." "How often?" "A few times a month. A few times a month. While I sat home alone wondering why my husband was never around." "And all this time you never thought to tell your wife?" "I was trying to protect you." "From what?" "From this. From exactly this reaction." I nodded slowly, understanding finally hitting me with perfect clarity. "You weren't protecting me, Evan. You were protecting yourself, your image, your reputation, your perfect life." "That's not true." "Isn't it? Because the way I see it, you got to have everything. A successful career, a beautiful house, a wife who supported your dreams and asked for nothing. And on the side, you got to play daddy to a little boy who adores you." "It wasn't like that." "What was it like? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've been living 2 lives. And I was too stupid to see it." Maya stepped forward, her face full of protective anger. "You are not stupid, Aisha. Don't you dare call yourself stupid. Then what am I? Because a smart woman would have seen the signs. A smart woman would have asked harder questions. A trusting woman, Maya said firmly. You're a trusting woman who believed her husband when he said he loved her. Did you love me? I asked Evan directly. Ever? Or was I just convenient? Of course I loved you. I still love you. But not enough to be faithful. Not enough to be honest. This isn't about love, Aisha. It's about a complicated situation that got out of hand. 7 years is not a situation getting out of hand. 7 years is a choice you made every single day. The room was so quiet, I could hear the antique clock ticking on the mantel. Marilyn stood like a statue, her face carved from ice. Evan's business partners looked like they wanted to disappear into the floor. What happens now? Someone asked quietly. I looked around the room one more time. At the flowers I'd arranged so carefully. At the anniversary cake sitting untouched on the dining room table. At the gifts wrapped in silver paper, celebrating a marriage that had never really existed. Now the party's over. People started moving then, gathering purses and coats with uncomfortable murmurs of goodbye. Nobody knew what to say. How do you congratulate a couple when you've just watched their marriage implode in real time? Maya lingered, clearly torn between leaving me alone and staying to help clean up the wreckage. Go, I told her gently. I need to be alone right now. Are you sure? I can stay. We can talk. I know. But I need to think. She hugged me tightly. Call me tomorrow. Promise. I promise. One by one, our guests filed out. Some avoided eye contact entirely. Others squeezed my hand or whispered words of support. Evan's business associates left quickly, probably already planning how to distance themselves from the scandal. Finally, only Marilyn remained. She stood in our devastated living room, her expensive dress perfect despite everything that had happened. When she looked at me, her eyes were full of cold fury. Are you satisfied? She asked. Satisfied? You've destroyed my son's reputation, his career, his life, all over some woman's claims about a child that probably isn't even his. Marilyn, I didn't create this situation. I just exposed it. You could have handled this privately, like a lady. The way your son handled having another family, privately, her face tightened. That woman trapped him. She saw a successful man and decided to make claims. She trapped him for 7 years, without me noticing. You're too naive to understand how these women operate. These women, poor women, desperate women, women who see an opportunity and take it. The racism in her voice was barely concealed now. In her mind, this was about class and race as much as infidelity. A poor woman trying to trap her rich white son. What about me, Marilyn? What kind of woman am I? She looked me up and down with obvious distaste. You're the kind of woman who airs dirty laundry in public instead of handling things with dignity. And what would handling it with dignity look like? You would have talked to your husband privately, worked things out, protected the family name. Even if it meant living a lie? Especially then. Do you think you're the first wife to deal with something like this? Marriage requires sacrifice, Aisha. It requires putting the family first. What family? The family where my husband has been lying to me for 7 years? The family you married into? The family that gave you everything you have? I looked around our beautiful house, filled with beautiful things that suddenly felt like chains. You're right, I said quietly. You gave me everything I have. This house, these clothes, this life. Everything except honesty. Everything except respect. Respect is earned. How do I earn it, Marilyn? By staying quiet? By pretending I don't know about his other family? By smiling and playing the perfect wife while he lives whatever life he wants? By being the kind of wife who supports her husband through difficult times. What about the kind of husband who's honest with his wife? Marilyn's laugh was sharp and bitter. Honestly, Aisha, you're too idealistic. Men have needs. They make mistakes. A smart wife learns to adapt. Is that what you did? Adapted? For just a moment, something vulnerable flickered in her eyes. Then it was gone, replaced by steel. I built a life. I built a family. I built a legacy. And I didn't throw it all away over wounded pride. After she left, I stood alone in our ruined living room. Broken glass crunched under my feet as I walked to the window. Our neighbors' houses glowed warmly in the darkness, full of families living their real lives. Evan came back downstairs around midnight. He'd changed out of his party clothes into jeans and a t-shirt. He looked smaller somehow, diminished. Aisha, we need to talk. I was sitting on the couch, still in my black dress, staring at nothing. I think we've said enough. No, we haven't. You humiliated me tonight. You humiliated both of us. I told the truth. You destroyed everything we've built together. What did we build, Evan? Really? What did we actually build? He sat down across from me, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees. We built a marriage, a life, a future. Built on lies, built on love. You don't love me. That's not true. Then prove it. Right now. Tell me the truth about everything. About Lena, about Caleb, about the last 7 years, all of it. He was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. I met Lena in college, before I met you. We dated for about a year. When we broke up, I thought it was over. But it wasn't. She called me a few months after you and I started dating. She said she was pregnant. And? I didn't believe her at first. I thought she was lying, trying to get me back. But she wasn't lying. No, she wasn't lying. What did you do? I panicked. I was falling in love with you. I had plans, a future mapped out. And suddenly there was this. Complication. A child is not a complication, Evan. He was then. To me, he was. The honesty was brutal, but it was honest. So you ignored them? For a while. I told myself it wasn't my problem. That maybe the baby wasn't mine. But eventually you got involved. Lena struggled. She was raising him alone, working 2 jobs. She never asked for help, but I could see she needed it. So you helped. I started giving her money, just occasionally. Then I wanted to see the boy, just to make sure he was okay. And? Evan's voice broke slightly. He looked like me, Aisha. Even as a toddler, he looked exactly like me. So you knew. I suspected, but I kept telling myself it didn't matter, that I could help them without it affecting us. For 7 years, you've been supporting another woman and child, and you thought it wouldn't affect our marriage. I thought I could manage both. I thought I could keep everyone happy. Everyone except me, because I didn't even know there was anyone else to keep happy. I never meant for it to go on this long. What did you think would happen? That they would just disappear? I don't know. I wasn't thinking clearly. You've had 7 years to think clearly. We sat in silence for several minutes. The grandfather clock chimed midnight, and technically, our anniversary was over. What happens on Monday? Evan asked finally. We get the DNA results. And then? Then we'll know for sure. But you already know, don't you? I looked at my husband, really looked at him. His face was drawn with exhaustion, and something that might have been relief. The relief of finally being caught. Yes, I already know. So what happens to us? I don't know. Aisha, I know I messed up. I know I hurt you. But we can work through this. We can go to counseling. We can figure it out. Can we? How do we work through 7 years of lies? We start over. We start fresh, with complete honesty from now on. What about Lena and Caleb? What about them? They're not going to just disappear because I found out about them. I'll figure something out. You'll figure something out, Evan? That little boy thinks you're his father. You can't just walk away from him. I know that. So what's your plan? Keep seeing them? Keep supporting them? While trying to rebuild our marriage? I don't know, Aisha. I don't have all the answers. But you're asking me to stay anyway. I'm asking you to give us a chance. I stood up and walked to the window again. Outside, the world looked exactly the same as it had this morning. But everything was different. Evan, answer one more question for me. Okay. If I hadn't found out, how long would you have kept living this double life? He didn't answer immediately, and his silence told me everything I needed to know. Forever, I said quietly. You would have done this forever. Aisha, you would have let me keep believing we had a real marriage while you played house with another family. You would have let me plan our future, maybe have children with you, never knowing that you already had a child with someone else. It wasn't supposed to be like this, but it was like this. For 7 years it was exactly like this. I turned away from the window and looked at my husband one last time. I'm going to bed. Tomorrow I'll think about what comes next. Can I come with you? No. Sleep in the guest room. For how long? I don't know. As I climbed the stairs to our bedroom, I heard Evan moving around in the living room, probably cleaning up the broken glass and wine stains, trying to put the pieces back together. But some things, once broken, can never be fixed. Some truths, once spoken, can never be taken back. And some marriages, once exposed for what they really are, can never survive the light of day. Monday would bring the DNA results, but I already knew what I needed to know. The question now wasn't whether Caleb was Evan's son. The question was whether I was still Evan's wife. I woke up Sunday morning alone in our king-sized bed for the first time in 5 years. The space where Evan usually slept was cold and untouched. Outside, birds were singing like nothing had changed, but everything felt different in the morning light. I stayed in bed longer than usual, staring at the ceiling and thinking about the little boy with Evan's eyes. Somewhere across town, Caleb was probably eating breakfast, maybe watching cartoons, having no idea that his world was about to change too. When I finally went downstairs, Evan was in the kitchen making coffee. He'd already cleaned up from the party. The broken wine glass was gone, the stains scrubbed from the rug, like he could erase what had happened by removing the evidence. "Morning," he said carefully, not quite meeting my eyes. "Morning." He poured me a cup of coffee, adding cream the way he knew I liked it. Such a small domestic gesture that it almost broke my heart. "I've been thinking," he said, about us, about how to fix this. I sat down at our kitchen island, wrapping my hands around the warm mug. "And what did you decide?" "I want to cut ties with them, with Lena and the boy, completely." The words hit me like a slap. "What?" "I'll provide financial support, of course. Child support if the test proves he's mine. But no more visits, no more playing daddy. I'll end it." "Evan, you can't just abandon a child who loves you. I can, if it means saving our marriage. That little boy has been calling you daddy for 5 years. You're the only father he's known. That was a mistake. I should have never gotten so involved." I stared at my husband, seeing him clearly for maybe the first time. "You would really do that? Just walk away from a 7-year-old child? For you? For us? Yes. And you think that would fix everything?" "It's a start. We could move somewhere new, start fresh. Maybe California, where my company wants to open a new office. We could leave all this behind. Run away, you mean? Start over. What about Caleb? What about him? He's not our responsibility. He's your son. We don't know that yet. You know it. I can see it in your face every time I say his name. Evan set down his coffee cup harder than necessary. Fine. Let's say he is my son. That doesn't mean I have to destroy my marriage for him. Your marriage is already destroyed, only if you let it be. I looked around our beautiful kitchen, at the life we'd built together. 5 years of shared meals, quiet conversations, dreams for the future. But it had all been built on a foundation of lies. Evan, I need you to understand something. This isn't just about you having a child with another woman. It's about you lying to me for 7 years. It's about you living a completely different life and letting me believe we had something real. We did have something real. Did we? Because I don't know what was real anymore. When you said you loved me, were you thinking about her? When you promised me we'd start a family soon, did you already have a family? When you held me at night, were you wishing you were somewhere else? It wasn't like that. What was it like? Complicated. That's not an answer. Evan ran his hands through his hair, a gesture I'd seen 1,000 times before. You want the truth? The whole truth? Yes. I loved you both. In different ways, but I loved you both. The words hung between us like a confession. I felt something inside me break a little more. You loved her. I cared about her. We had history. You loved her enough to keep seeing her for 7 years. It wasn't about love, Aisha. It was about responsibility. About doing the right thing. What about doing the right thing for me? Your wife? I thought I was protecting you. By lying to me. By handling it myself. I stood up and walked to the window that looked out over our backyard. The garden we'd planted together last spring was in full bloom. We'd spent weekends working in the dirt, planning which flowers to put where, dreaming about the children who would someday play among the roses. Evan, I want to meet her. What? Lena, I want to meet her. Absolutely not. Why? Because it's a bad idea. Because it'll just make everything worse. Worse than it already is? Aisha, please don't do this. But I was already reaching for my phone. What's her last name again? Brooks? Aisha, stop. I'm going to find her with or without your help. You can give me her address, or I can look it up myself. Why do you want to meet her? Because she's been part of my marriage for 7 years, and I didn't even know she existed. Because there's a little boy who's going to be my stepson if I stay married to you. Because I need to understand what I'm really dealing with. Evan stared at me for a long moment. You're serious. Dead serious. Fine, but I'm coming with you. No. Aisha, this is between her and me. You've done enough. It took me an hour to find Lena Brooks online. She worked at a daycare center across town and had a small social media presence. Her photos showed a woman with tired eyes and a genuine smile, usually surrounded by children. In several recent photos, I could see Caleb, a beautiful little boy with Evan's green eyes and stubborn chin. I drove to the daycare center that afternoon, while Evan paced around our house like a caged animal. He'd begged me not to go, tried to convince me it would only cause more pain. But I needed to see her face when I introduced myself. I needed to know if she was the innocent victim she appeared to be, or if she'd known about me all along. The daycare was in a converted house in an older neighborhood. Children's artwork covered the windows, and I could hear laughter from the backyard playground. It was the kind of warm, messy place where kids were loved and cared for. I waited in my car until the workday ended, watching parents pick up their children. Around 6 o'clock, Lena came out of the building with Caleb beside her. She looked exactly like her photos. Pretty in a natural way, wearing jeans and a t-shirt with paint stains on the front. Caleb was chattering excitedly about something, gesturing with his hands the same way Evan did when he was passionate about a subject. The resemblance was unmistakable. I got out of my car and approached them slowly. Lena Brooks. She turned, and I saw wariness flicker in her eyes when she saw me. She didn't know who I was, but something about my presence made her protective instincts kick in. Yes, my name is Aisha Whitmore. I'm Evan's wife. The color drained from her face. Her hand automatically moved to Caleb's shoulder, pulling him slightly behind her. Oh, she said quietly. I wonder if we could talk. She glanced down at Caleb, who was looking back and forth between us with confusion. Caleb, honey, why don't you go play on the swings for a few minutes? But I want to go home. You said we could have pizza tonight. We will. Just give me a few minutes to talk to this lady, okay? He ran to the small playground beside the building, and Lena and I stood facing each other in uncomfortable silence. How long have you known about me? I asked. Since the beginning. The simple honesty of her answer surprised me. I'd been prepared for lies, for denials. Since the beginning of what? Since Evan started coming around when Caleb was 2. He told me he was married. He said you didn't know about us. And you were okay with that? Lena's laugh was bitter. Was I okay with it? No, I wasn't okay with any of it. But what was I supposed to do? You could have told me. How? I didn't know you. I didn't know how to reach you. And honestly, I was afraid. Afraid of what? Of you taking him away completely. Of Caleb losing the only father he'd ever known. I looked over at the little boy on the swings, pumping his legs to go higher. Tell me about that. About him being Caleb's father. What do you want to know? Everything. How often does he come? What kind of relationship do they have? Lena was quiet for a moment, studying my face. Why are you asking? Because I need to understand what I'm dealing with. I need to know if my husband has been playing house with your family while neglecting his marriage to me. Playing house? Lena's voice sharpened. Is that what you think this is? I don't know what to think. That's why I'm here. She looked at Caleb again, then back at me. Evan comes by maybe twice a week. Sometimes more if Caleb has a game or a school event. He helps with homework, takes him to the park, reads bedtime stories sometimes. Each word felt like a knife. Bedtime stories. He's a good father, Mrs. Whitmore. Whatever else you might think about him, he loves that little boy. But he doesn't live with you. No. We're not together, if that's what you're asking. We never have been, not since college. But you have feelings for him. Lena was quiet for so long I thought she wouldn't answer. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. I loved him once, a long time ago, but that ship sailed when he chose you. Did it? Because from where I stand, it looks like he chose both of us. Maybe he did. But I wasn't the one making that choice. I was just trying to survive, to raise my son the best way I knew how. When Evan wanted to be involved, I let him because Caleb needed a father. What about what you needed? What I needed didn't matter. It was about what was best for Caleb. I found myself believing her. There was no artifice in her voice, no manipulation. Just a tired woman doing her best in an impossible situation. Lena, did you know we took a DNA test yesterday? Yes, Evan called me. Are you prepared for the results? I've been prepared for 7 years. Caleb is Evan's son. I've never doubted it. What happens when we get official confirmation? I don't know. That's up to you and Evan to decide. What do you want to happen? She looked at me directly for the first time, and I saw the exhaustion in her eyes, the weight of carrying this secret for so long. I want what's best for Caleb. I want him to have a father who loves him and doesn't treat him like a shameful secret. Beyond that, I just want peace. Peace? This has been hard, Mrs. Whitmore. Harder than you know. Having to explain to my son why his daddy can't come to school events, why we can't visit his family, why everything has to be private. Having to watch Caleb love someone who might disappear from his life at any moment. You think Evan would disappear? I think Evan does what's convenient for Evan. And if staying married to you becomes more important than being a father to Caleb, then yes, I think he'd disappear. Her words confirmed what I'd suspected, but hadn't wanted to admit. Evan's offer that morning to cut ties with them wasn't noble sacrifice. It was typical Evan, choosing the path that would cause him the least trouble. What kind of man does that make him? I asked. That's not for me to say. You know him better than I do. Do I? Because I'm starting to think I don't know him at all. Caleb ran back over to us, breathless from the swings. Mama, can we go home now? I'm hungry. Lena smoothed his hair, and I could see the fierce protectiveness in her gesture. Sure, baby. Say goodbye to Mrs. Whitmore. Hi, Caleb said shyly, giving me a little wave. Hi, Caleb. It's nice to meet you. Are you my daddy's friend? The innocent question hit me like a punch to the stomach. I looked into those green eyes, Evan's eyes, and felt something crack inside my chest. Something like that, I managed to say. As they walked to their car, Caleb's hand trustingly in his mother's, I understood something I hadn't before. This wasn't really about Evan's betrayal anymore. It wasn't even about the lies or the double life. It was about a little boy who'd done nothing wrong but love a father who was treating him like an inconvenient secret. It was about a woman who'd been carrying the burden of another woman's marriage for 7 years. It was about me, and what kind of person I wanted to be when this was all over. I drove home through the evening traffic, my mind clearer than it had been in days. By the time I pulled into our driveway, I knew what I had to do. Evan was waiting in the living room, pacing like he had been all day. Well, how did it go? She's a good person. That's it? That's all you have to say? She loves that little boy. She's been protecting him this whole time, even when it hurt her. Aisha, what are you trying to say? I sat down on our couch. The same couch where just yesterday I'd been surrounded by friends celebrating our anniversary. It felt like a lifetime ago. I'm saying that I finally understand what kind of man I married. What's that supposed to mean? It means I know what you're going to choose, Evan. When it comes down to it, when you have to pick between your reputation and that little boy, I know what you'll choose. You're wrong. Am I? This morning you offered to abandon him completely. A child who calls you daddy. Your own son. I was trying to save our marriage. By abandoning your child. He's not. We don't know for sure that he's mine. Stop lying, Evan. Stop lying to me. Stop lying to yourself. We both know the truth. Evan sat down heavily in his chair, suddenly looking older than his 33 years. What do you want from me, Aisha? I want you to be the man I thought I married. The man who would never walk away from his responsibilities. The man who would do the right thing, even when it was hard. I am trying to do the right thing. The right thing for who? For you? For your image? For your mother's precious reputation? For us. For our marriage. I looked at my husband, this man I'd loved for 5 years, and felt something die inside me. There is no us anymore, Evan. There hasn't been for 7 years. I just didn't know it. The words hung in the air between us, final and irrevocable. Aisha, please, don't do this. I'm not doing anything. You did this. 7 years ago, when you decided to live 2 lives instead of 1 honest one. We can fix this. How? By pretending the last 7 years never happened? By abandoning a child who loves you? By building another marriage on more lies? By starting over? By being completely honest from now on? It's too late for honesty, Evan. Some things can't be fixed once they're broken. He was crying now, tears streaming down his face. I love you, Aisha. I know I messed up, but I love you. I know you do. In your way, I think you love me, but you love yourself more. You always have. That's not true. Prove it. Go to Lena and Caleb right now. Tell them you want to be a real father, not a secret one. Tell them you're going to be honest about who they are, that you're going to stop treating them like a shameful secret. Aisha, go to your mother and tell her she needs to accept her grandson. Go to your business partners and explain that you have a son you're proud of. Stop hiding and start being the father that little boy deserves. And what about us? There is no us, not anymore. So that's it? 7 years of marriage, and you're just throwing it all away? I'm not throwing anything away. You threw it away 7 years ago when you decided that lying was easier than being honest. I stood up and walked toward the stairs, feeling lighter than I had in days. Where are you going? To pack. Aisha, wait. The DNA results come tomorrow. At least wait until we know for sure. I turned back to look at him one last time. I already know for sure, Evan, and so do you. Know what? That some things matter more than test results. That little boy has been calling you daddy for 5 years. Whether or not you share DNA, you're his father in every way that counts. And the fact that you'd even consider walking away from him tells me everything I need to know about who you really are. Please don't leave. I'm not leaving, Evan. I already left. 7 years ago, when you decided I didn't deserve the truth. I just didn't know it yet. I went upstairs and packed a single suitcase with the essentials. Everything else, the beautiful clothes, the expensive jewelry, the life we'd built together, could stay. None of it had been real anyway. When I came back downstairs, Evan was still sitting in his chair, staring at nothing. Where will you go? Maya's for now. Then I'll figure out something more permanent. This is really it? You're really leaving? This is really it. What about our marriage, our vows, for better or worse? I stopped at the front door, my hand on the handle. Evan, for better or worse doesn't mean accepting lies and betrayal. It means facing life's challenges together, honestly. We never had that chance because you never gave it to us. I'm sorry. I know you are, but sorry doesn't change what happened, and it doesn't change who you are. I opened the door and stepped out into the evening air. Behind me I could hear Evan getting up from his chair, but he didn't follow me outside. As I put my suitcase in the car, I looked back at our house one last time. 5 years of my life were in that house. 5 years of dreams and plans and quiet moments of happiness. But also 5 years of lies. I got in my car and drove away without looking back. 3 weeks later, I was sitting in a small cafe near my new apartment when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Mrs. Whitmore, this is Lena Brooks. I wanted to let you know that the DNA test came back. Caleb is Evan's son. Evan has asked to have regular visitation, and he's told his family about Caleb. I thought you should know. Thank you for whatever you said to him. Caleb is so happy to finally have his daddy be proud of him. I stared at the message for a long time, feeling a complex mix of emotions. Relief that Evan had finally done the right thing. Sadness that it had taken losing his marriage to make him honest. And something else. Something that felt almost like peace. I typed back a simple response. I'm glad Caleb has his father. He's a good boy and deserves to be loved openly. Then I put my phone away and went back to my coffee and the book I was reading. Outside the cafe window, the world continued turning. People hurried past on their way to important places, living their real lives. For the first time in 7 years, I was living my real life too. Some mornings now, I wake up and remember that I used to be married. I remember the weight of my wedding ring, the shared closeness of a king-sized bed, the comfortable routine of morning coffee for two. But I don't miss the lies. I don't miss the uncertainty, the feeling that something was always just slightly wrong. I don't miss being half of a marriage that was only real for one person. Sometimes I wonder about Caleb, whether he's happy now that his father doesn't have to hide him anymore. I wonder about Lena, whether she's found peace now that the truth is out. I even wonder about Evan, whether he's learned to be honest, or whether he's just found new ways to live divided lives. But mostly, I think about the future, about the life I'm building now, brick by brick, on a foundation of truth. About the person I'm becoming when I don't have to pretend that black is white, that lies are love, that silence is strength. I'm learning that peace isn't something you find, it's something you create. And you create it by choosing truth over comfort, dignity over security, yourself over the version of yourself that other people want you to be. Some mornings, when the light is just right and I'm drinking my coffee alone in my small kitchen, I catch myself smiling, really smiling, from somewhere deep inside. And I know that leaving was the bravest thing I've ever done, because sometimes the only way to save yourself is to walk away from everything you thought you wanted and choose everything you actually need instead. Some mornings, I'm genuinely happy, and that's enough.